Well, guys, we're taking a break from preparing for the pregame show on 1290 The Source. This is the Wildcat Sports Reports 3 and Out, your pregame for the Arizona-Stanford game going on tonight down in Tucson, Arizona. And Brad, you know, anytime you have a great team like Stanford, a big-time player like Andrew Luck, you know that it's going to be a good, intense game. What do you think is your prediction for this week's game?
You know, right now with Arizona coming back from that loss to Oklahoma State, they weren't as impressive as you'd like to see them. Before the season, I thought Arizona might pull off the upset. I still think it's a possibility, but I'm picking against them. Right now, Arizona has to show they can shut down that power running game of Stanford. Oklahoma State just ran over those defensive tackles. Arizona's defensive tackles are speedy. They're not big. And if you can't slow down the run, that's going to buy Andrew Luck time. And Andrew Luck, even without time, is a great quarterback. With time, he's one of the best I've ever seen. He is honestly the second or best quarterback I've ever seen in watching Arizona football. The best was Drew Bledsoe. And by the time this season's over, Luck may be the best. Remember, Bledsoe was the #1 pick in the draft. Mm-hmm. Andrew Luck, gonna be the #1 pick in the draft. I saw Aikman. These guys are better. I saw those great Washington quarterbacks. These two are better. These guys are great. Luck is great. You hope, though, you can do what Duke did. Duke popped him a lot. Mm-hmm. They hit him. They blitzed him. They took him out of his game. Eventually, Stanford was just too good for Duke. But Arizona's a better team than Duke. Arizona's got a better home field advantage. Now, they don't have the time difference. But if they can slow down that run, put some pressure on Luck, he's going to get his. But you might slow him down enough where Arizona can get theirs and beat them kind of like they did 2 years ago when it was a shootout. And in the end, Arizona made 1 or 2 plays more than Stanford. Right now, I think Stanford looks poised to win. I don't think it's going to be the blowout a lot of people think. But if they can't slow down that running game, it will be a long night for Arizona because they won't get their offense on the field.
Right, absolutely. And I think you hit it right on the back. You know, Stanford's known for Andrew Luck. Anytime you have a great quarterback, you know, people are very aware of the passing game. One of the things that Stanford does very well that has gone underneath the radar is their running game, averaging 178 yards per game. To the Wildcats, 58 yards per game. Anytime you're going to be involved in the shootout where, you know, perhaps a pass-heavy game, we know that U of A's offense is a pass-heavy offense. But without the running game being influenced in it, it's really hard to set up the passing game. Stanford's going to come in well-balanced, and judging from what we saw against Oklahoma State, I don't think there's any way we can right now pick the Wildcats to win. Now, I'm hoping that, you know, Oklahoma State, your first road game of the year, it's on a Thursday night. You know, you lose Kreiner last minute. Who knows what the mental makeup in that locker room was. Now, you're at home. You're playing on a Saturday. You're playing a team that you've seen the last couple of years. Not that they hadn't seen Oklahoma State, but this is a foe that they know they're going to get year after year. So you're hoping the scenario's different, that the Wildcats can put forth a better effort and put up, if anything, at least put themselves in a position where 1 or 2 plays can be the outcome of the game. And hopefully those plays go the way of the Wildcats. But judging from what we saw a week and a half ago, as of right now, as much as Stanford, I think, can be beat, I don't think tonight is the night where they get beat.
Well, maybe the good news for Arizona is, A, Stanford's I think, least impressive of the 3 teams they're going to face in the next 3 weeks, including Oklahoma State. You got Oregon. Oregon's better than Stanford, in my opinion. Right. Oklahoma State is better than Stanford. You also got an extra day of practice and 2 extra days to prepare. Now, the players got Friday or part of Friday off. They also got Sunday off, but they practiced Friday, something you don't normally, Saturday, something you don't normally do. The coaches got about 72 hours extra of film study. That can be possibly the difference, whereas when Arizona was practicing, Duke was hosting Stanford. Maybe that's a slight difference, whereas you only got 2 days to prepare for Oklahoma State. You were on the road, now you're at home. Those are things working in Arizona's favor.
Not to mention the 2 extra the days that they have off. This is a Wildcat team that is ailing from injuries. So that's also, something that's going to help them, giving them those days off, a couple extra days of rest. Friday, you work out the kinks, stuff like that. But that hopefully will be something that can benefit the Wildcats, absolutely. So, there's a lot going on. You mentioned the schedule that the Wildcats are facing right now, coming off Oklahoma State, Stanford, next week Oregon. How important is this game for the mental makeup of this team going forth for the rest of the season?
I think it's important. I don't think it's vital. I think what Arizona has to do is they have to survive the next 2 weeks. They don't necessarily have to win either game, but they have to look better than they did against Oklahoma State. What they really have to do is they have to come away knowing, and this is hard when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, that you took them on the chin, you faced the best maybe the country has to offer on offense, and you survived. It's going to sound weird to say, USC coming up on the road is actually a break compared to these three teams.
Absolutely.
They don't look great this year.
Murderer's Row right now. I mean, you've got 3 top 10 teams and perhaps 3 of the best offenses in the country.
And you could argue 2 of the best 3 quarterbacks in the country with Wheaton and Luck, and that's no disrespect to Thomas, who's more of a runner than a passer. But what Arizona has to say is they have to come out of here, assuming they can't pick off 1 or 2 of these games, we're going to assume they can, and they have to be more confident than they when they went in, and they have to come away saying, you know what, we're a better football team for having faced this competition. Whether an 18 or 19-year-old kid can do that, I don't know. A lot of times it could be. Remember, if they lose these 2, they would be on an 8-game Division 1A
against FBS teams, absolutely
losing streak,
and that's that's sitting in the back of their minds.
But if you can come out of here saying, you know what, everything from here on out is easier. And I know that doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but easier than you faced. You're not going to see a quarterback like Luck again. You're not going to see an offense like Oregon's again. Frankly, you might not see a defense like either of those 2 again. And you can come out of there healthy. I know the fans don't want to hear this, but if you can just get some moral victories, then you can go on the rest of the year. You probably can't, being 0-2 in conference, let's say win the Pac-12 South, maybe. But can you set yourself up for success, for a second-place finish, maybe even contend and get it done?
Right, absolutely. I mean, there's really 3 ways this game can go. U of A can win. U of A can lose, play in the game, be in the game the entire time and lose, or they can get blown off the field. And I think each scenario presents itself definitely differently for the mental, makeup of this team. If U of A wins the game, great. You've perhaps salvaged the whole season. Not that it's in the dumps, but now you can look at it an optimistic view, saying, okay, we can play with anybody in the country. Okay, take away that Oklahoma State game, out of conference anyways. Big deal. It's an out-of-conference game. Really doesn't mean anything. You win your conference, then you can advance, go to a good bowl game. Great. So if they can beat Stanford, that's great. Sets them up next week, which would make that Oregon game, even though it's early in the season, a very interesting game. Or the Wildcats can lose, play in the game and lose. And I think, you mentioned this earlier, that the makeup of a 18, 20-year-old kid, if they can realize, hey, we can play with these guys, we've seen the best, we've improved every week. If they can improve from last week's game, then they're going in the right direction. If they lose bad, then I think it's bad. To quote the late, great Derek Anderson, these kids put their heart and soul in this. Wait. Apparently Derek Anderson's still alive. I didn't know this. Okay. Well, anyways.
His career is gone.
But, these kids, this is their life. They put their heart and soul into this. And when you get, put so much into something and get disappointment back, especially when you're that young, I'm worried that some of these kids could just pretty much say it's, not the season's over, but the odds of going to a good bowl game are now out the door. How do I react from here? And that's something that actually does worry me, because if you lose ugly to this game, then Oregon comes to town, you lose ugly in that game, and there's not a lot of positive to look at.
Last year, when they were blown out by Stanford, we didn't know it then. It was the beginning of the end. Although they played tough against Oregon, they ended up losing 4 more after that, including 2 blowouts.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's we're gonna have to see how the second half of the season works out. It's kind of the opposite of last year. Last year, you had a good Iowa team rolling here, but the first half of the season definitely wasn't as tough as the second half. They got the second half and they weren't ready for it. Whether that be just injuries, broken down, really not ready to go for the grind from week to week. This year the opposite. The first half of the season is just totally stockpiled, where the second half of the season you're not playing as much talent. So that makes for an interesting scenario if this team is down and out. Hopefully they can realize we've seen the best, we've got not as good at teams the rest of the way, and hey, we can do this. Hopefully, putting in a little win streak or at least, a second half of the season that is better than the first. Which, when we're talking about positives and negatives, one thing that has stuck out as far as the Wildcats and positives, Nic Foles. Going into this weekend, leading the country in basically most passing statistics. Now you've got the #1 quarterback coming in. Nic Foles is a competitor. He hears stuff about Andrew Luck and saying, wait a minute, my numbers are better than his, How is this game gonna go for both of these players? When you have the leading passer in the country getting no love, and then you've got a great quarterback, perhaps one of the best talents we've seen in 25 years since John Elway, whatever the scouts want to say. How does that scenario make out for this game, and how do you think that affects Nic Foles?
I actually hope that come 7:45 tonight, Nic Foles forgets about it. Now, I hope right now it's eating at his belly a little bit, and he's watching a little extra film. He's working a little more with those receivers. But when they get into that game, I don't want him paying any attention to what Andrew Luck's doing. Because what happens when you try to compete with numbers with the guy from across the field from you? The only numbers that should count is that scoreboard. That's when you throw interceptions. That's when you start pressing. That's when you try to thread the needle. Don't try to make a throw that Luck made. Make your throws.
Right.
Now, when he puts up 7, you better come out and put up 7. If not, you put up 14. He needs to keep tabs with him on the scoreboard. But if that means handing off and having 5 rushing touchdowns, fine. If that means, if he does it with 1 long bomb and you do it with 10 short passes, that's fine. The only numbers that matter tonight is the scoreboard. If you can keep even with the points or more, great. It doesn't matter if Luck throws for 500 and you throw for 100. More than likely, though, we know Foles will have to throw for 400 yards for Arizona to win this football game. If Arizona wins the football game, all the accolades, all the praise, all the, frankly, draft stock rise will come. It's one of those, it's like when you tell a basketball player, win first, then worry about your stats. Same thing tonight. If Foles wins, the stats will come because he will be a reason they win, but he can't know what Luck is doing and worry about it and keep an eye on it and look up at those totals on the Super Megatron or whatever they're calling it. He just has to go out, play his game, play his best game, but play his game and put Arizona in the end zone.
I think you're right. They're never going to be on the field at the same time, okay? So how does Nic Foles outperform, out-compete, outdo Andrew Luck? And it's really not in tonight's game. It's the past week leading up to this game. Taking extra film, reading defenses, maybe, working a little extra with your receivers. So come game time, he has done everything he can to prepare. I want to think Nic Foles, when he gets on the field, is going to do his best no matter what. I don't think that he needs Andrew Luck to come into the field to say, oh, crap, I've got to really play well tonight. I think that he knows that
Nick
this offense...
swear like that.
Oh, crud. But I think, Nick knows that if they're going to be victorious tonight, they're not going to run for 300 yards. He's going to have to throw for 300-400, put up a bunch of TDs. He knows that. But, if the Wildcats can get a W... Nic Foles plays a good game, not even a great game, but a good game. He's still going to be near the top statistically. All eyes are going to be on this game because it's an ESPN game. You're going to have the front runner for the Heisman on TV. So therefore, Nic Foles can give himself a little bit of limelight and let the nation know, hey, this guy can flat out throw the ball and play. And I think it's, it's really, if it works, the game works out, and the Wildcats can get a W, you're going to see his stock rise, and you're going to see it rise a lot. Now, hopefully, the rest of the team can put up a fight, because in no way alone can Nic Foles win this game. It's going to be a total team effort. The defense is going to have to play the best game they played in a year and a half. The offense, is going to have to play well. We haven't had a running game. For Nic Foles to look comfortable passing the ball, he's going to have some sort of run threat to keep those linebackers, to keep those defensive linemen honest. We'll see how it plays out. It should be interesting. You've had 3 and Out. This is Brad Allis. I'm Cannon Allis. Get ready for the game tonight. It should be a big one. And you can catch us next week for next week's 3 and Out for the Oregon U of A game. Thanks a lot, guys.